Okay, so since PPE, dagko man siya ng mga asset, most of the time when we purchase or when we construct our property, plant, and equipment, example, building, we do not have enough fund para mo sustain or mo para makalahutay sa ato ang construction. So, simply put, there might be times that we need to borrow money or to make loans. So, in connection with the loans or the borrowed amounts nga ato ang gihiram para mapatukod or mapalit ang mga PPE, there would be an attached or we're going to incur borrowing costs. Siguro ang pinaka-common ani nga cost is the interest expense. Yes. So, kaning mga borrowing costs, from the term itself, the cost of borrowing the money will be included in the cost of the building. So, PAS 23, or Philippine Accounting Standards 23, defines borrowing costs as interest and other costs that an entity incurs in connection with borrowing the funds. Kung hindi ka rin naman bibili ng building or hindi ka magpapakonstruct ng building, hindi mo kailangan na manghiram ng pera. Kung hindi mo naman kailangan manghiram ng pera, hindi mo kailangan mag-incur ng interest or hindi mo kailangan na i-shoulder ang burden of paying an interest. But because you want to purchase or you want to construct a PPE, hence, you need to borrow money kasi wala kang enough funds, hence, kailangan mo ding bayaran ang mga interest expenses and all other charges in connection with that costs. So, bottom line, ano ang reason bakit mo kailangang magbayad ng interest? Because bumili ka or nagpa-construct ka ng PPE. Therefore, any expense in relation to that borrowed funds will be recorded or recognized as part of the cost of the building. Mura lang siya cause and effect ba? So, ngano ka naka-incur ani nga expenses because nagpatukod ka og building. Therefore, kanina mga expenses kailangan i-add nato sa cost dito sa building. So, specifically, borrowing costs include interest expense. Ayan, I think I mentioned this one earlier. Interest expense, we have the finance charge with respect to a finance lease. So, kunwari nag-rent, exchange difference arising from foreign currency borrowing. So, example, ang atong gihiram is a foreign money. Okay? So, naay mga differences between differences in relation to the adjustments or currency adjustments. Okay? So, kanina mga borrowing costs, again, included siya sa costs sa building. So, we have here a definition of a qualifying asset. So, I will leave all the reading to you. And take note, what are those items that should be excluded from the capitalization So, pag may capitalization, i-appeal siya sa cost sa item or sa asset. So, I think I mentioned this yesterday. Capitalization is the term. So, what are those things that we are going to exclude? Ayan. When assets are measured at fair value, therefore, the borrowing costs will not be included in the cost of the asset. So, ano tong biological assets? May encounter din natin siya later on. But, basically, katong mga gi-measure at fair value, inventory manufactured or produced in large quantity. So, kanang repetitive or recurring na nga mga activities. Huwag mo nang isali yung mga borrowing costs. Unlike sa pagpatukod ng building, dili man siguro every year kag patukod ng building, di ba? So, it happens once in a blue moon. Kaya yung mga borrowing costs na yan, sinasali siya sa cost of the building. Pero yung mga activities mo na lagi mo namang ginagawa, huwag mo nang isali yung mga borrowing costs. Expense mo na yun. Okay? Katulad nito, whiskey, even if it takes a substantial period of time to get ready for sale. So, like the wine, di ba? normally, ang operating cycle sa manufacturing of wine is not 1 year. Kasi kailangan nilang, parang, I'm not sure of the process, pero mas lami daw ang wine kung mas dugay nimo siya nga gipatambay usa. Therefore, ang iyahang operating cycle would most probably take more than 1 year. So, pariyaan na, more than 1 year. That doesn't mean nga PPE na siya. That doesn't mean nga ang imuhang fund nga giutang, ang mga costs or borrowing that fund would be automatically included in the capital. Hindi. Kasi, again, repetitive siya or recurring naman siya na activity. Assets that are ready for their intended use or sale when acquired. So, ayun. Like your inventory. Okay. I think this is just an illustration. So we have here some illustrations about borrowing costs. So we have general borrowings and specific borrowings. So from the term itself, specific borrowings, nangutang ka ng pera specifically for the use of this and that. Okay? Example, specifically for the construction of the building or specifically for the purchase of an equipment. So, ayun. So, that's what we call a specific borrowing. Pero pag sinabi natin general borrowing, this fund that you loan is used for many purposes. So, hindi talaga specifically for the construction or for the construction of a PPE. So, nagamit mo din siya sa iba pang mga bagay. Although part of it is used in the construction of the PPE. Okay? So, how do we account for these borrowings or how do we compute for the borrowing cost? So, you have here some illustrations and I believe and I hope na inyo ni siyang naagian, bahalag kadali lang. Alright? So, after those things, so medyo, ang illustrations na ato ang studyhan karon is somehow the same lang sa illustrations na gi-present niya dinhaa. So, I'll give you this problem. Okay. And let's try to answer this one. So we have Sulo Company. Okay, for those na hindi masyadong maka-access dun sa Messenger, then allow me to share my screen na naman. And dito na lang. Okay, we are required to compute the cost of the building. So alam naman natin kung ano yung cost of the PPE. I think we discussed about that yesterday. We have the purchase price, yung mga discounts, kailangan i-deduct, directly attributable costs, etc. But this time, we are going to focus on the computation of the borrowing cost, which is considered as part of the directly attributable cost. Okay? Apart ba siya? Ay, may bagong student. Okay, sige. I'll give you a minute or two to compute for the cost of the building. Sige, I'll give you a minute and then sabay-sabay tayong mag-compute. All right. So I think we have answers in our chat box. Okay? Sige. Let's try to find out. Solo company had the following borrowings during 2019. So, ayan. And sinabi niya pa, these borrowings were made for general purposes, but the proceeds were used to finance the construction. So, um, kung isa lang unta ni siya kautangan, wala tay problema. Ano man, you just have to compute for the interest and then that's it, interest expense and some other expenses incurred in the in relation to borrowing the funds. But if you could notice na atay duha ka loan, we have 12% bank loan and then 14% long-term loan. And in fact, lahi-lahi pa gyud sila og principal. So, we're going to compute how much of this interest will be considered as part of the borrowing cost. So, although you have 8 million total payment or total loan rather, the if you could notice, ang expense lang na ato ang nagamit for the building or ang amount lang na atong nagamit for the construction of the building is only 2 million plus 2 million plus 1 million. So, we only have 5 million in total. 8 million ang giutang, 5 million ang nagamit for the building. Ma'am, bakit 5 million lang? Kasi nga, di ba, this is a general borrowing. So, maybe the rest of the 3 million ginamit sa ibang mga events, okay? Sa ibang bagay. So, of the 8 million and the 360 plus 700 interest, how much will go to the construction of the building or to the cost of the building? That is what we're going to compute. So, I think my whole screen is shared. So, let's begin with, anong pangalan nga nito? Solo. So, sorry, hindi ko nga pala na-send yung kahapon, pero I'm trying to finalize the one that we answered yesterday para ma-send na to. Maklaro la ba? Okay, klaro ra. Okay, so compute the cost of the building. So according to PAS 23, we will start with getting the average, tama? Getting the average of our bank loan. I mean, of the expenses that we incurred in connection of the construction of the building. So, on January 1, we incurred 2 million. And since it is outstanding for the rest of the year, so ato siyang na-expense or nagamit, gikan January 1, therefore, for the whole 12 months, atong nagamit ang amount. So, that's 12 over 12. That's how we compute for the average. And for June 30, we incurred another 2 million. June 30, therefore, pila lang siya ka-months nga nagamit sa construction or outstanding dito sa construction from July 1, August, September, October, November, December. So, that is 6 over 12 months. And lastly, the 1 million, which was used on December 31. So, nano siya sa year end, therefore, wala na, zero na. Okay? So, let's compute. That's 2 million times 12 over 12. Ay, parang hirap naman. So, that's basically 12 million lang gihapon. Okay? And 2 million times 6 over 12. So, that's 1/2. And, of course, the 1 million, we are just going to ignore that one. And in total, we have an average of, naglalag. An average of 3 million, right? So this 3 million will be allocated to, will be allocated to the general borrowing. So mo ni siya ang ato ang amount nga nagamit out of the 8 million nga atong gihiram, 3 million ang ato ang nagamit. But the question is, how much or what will be the interest rate that we're going to use? So, ma'am, will it be 12 or will it be 14? So, unsaon man? According to the standards, still, we're going to compute for the average. So, we have 360,000 plus 700,000 nga mga interest. And divide it by, how much is this? 360 plus 700. Divide it by your principal, and your principal is 3 million plus 5 million. that would be 8 million in total. So how much or what would be our interest rate? That is 13.25. Ano na lang nato. 13.25% ang ato ang gamiton in the computation of the borrowing cost. So, again, first, what we did, we get the average amount of the expenditure na atong nagamit throughout the year. And then, we would like to get as well the interest rate in the average. So, that's interest divided by the principal, total interest divided by the total principal. So, we get 13.25. So, we are now going to proceed with the computation of our borrowing cost. Borrowing cost is simply the average expenditure, which is 3 million, times this interest rate that we just calculated a while ago. That's 13.25. Therefore, your borrowing cost is 397,500. But the question is, compute for the cost of the building. Borrowing cost pa lang ni siya. Ang cost yun nato principally sa pag-construct sa building was the 2 million plus another 2 million on June plus the 1 million in December 31. Therefore, we have a total of 5,397,500 cost of the building. Okay? So far, kumusta man? So, if you were able to read the module or the PDF file that I sent you, I think it would be easy for you to analyze all these things. Okay? So, again, first we calculated the average expenditures throughout the year. So, yearly nato ni nga gino-compute ha. And then, we computed for the capitalization rate. Pasabot, unsa nga rate atong gamiton in the computation of the borrowing cost which will eventually be capitalized or pasabot, i-add nato sa cost of the asset. Okay? So, there. So far, so good. Let's move on to the next problem. Unless naipangutana. This time, we will have Shangri-La. Shangri-La Company. So anyway, the one who got the correct answer was, I think it was Noreen. Thank you, Noreen. Yes, Noreen. So we were asking for the cost of the building, not just the borrowing cost. And the same question for this certain problem. Shangri-La, we would like to compute for the cost of the new building. What do you mean by lahi imong gipangita? Alright, so I was just giving you time para mubasa and then sabay-sabay na lang tanga mag-compute. Alright, for Shangri-La Company, what's new about this problem is that we have a specific borrowing, tama? And aside from that specific borrowing, we also have general borrowings. Specific borrowing, wala tayong problema kasi nakalaan talaga siya for that certain project or construction. Sa principal, sa general borrowing tayo, medyo magkakaroon ng complications. But alam naman natin, kaya natin, di ba? Sige, so let's have Shangri-La Company. Shangri-La borrowed 2 million with 12% interest. This is specifically for the construction of the building. The actual interest cost on specific borrowing was 240, but 10,000 was earned from the temporary investment of the borrowing proceeds. Ibig sabihin, nagborrow siya ng 2 million. So the companies usually do this. Pag manghiram sila og kwarta, if they want to loan money from the bank, di ba pag magpa-construct ka, tagi-tagi man po ng imuhang pagpalit or paggasto, dili man kay biglaan nimo nga paliton tanan. Murag kag nagpa-construct og balay, di ba? Hindi naman siya sa one day lang binili mo na lahat. Binili mo na yung hollow blocks, yung semento, nagbayad ka na ng labor, and etc. Di ba na ay ka ng staggered ba na payment, especially pag abot sa labor. So, instead na matulog ang 2 million sa iyahang kaban, Shangri-La Company opted to invest it temporarily. So let's say of the 2 million, ang iyahang gigamit or initial nga gigamit is 1 million. Ang 1 million, the other 1 million, wala pa niya nagamit. So, instead nga iya lang ng patulugon, iya na lang sang patubuon kadali. That's why there is a 10% 10,000 interest that was earned from the temporary investment. So, nakasabot ta ha, unsay pasabot aning temporary investment. Instead nga patulugon ang kwarta, kay wala pa man siya nagamit or di pa siya kailangan gamiton, kasi initially nakapagawas naman pud ta og certain amount, ato na lang sa siyang i-invest in a short-term investment scheme. Okay? Hindi naman siya yung pang 5 years talaga. Short-term lang, mga 3 months. So, hindi na masama ang 1 million na i-invest mo in 3 months. Kahit pa paano, may ma-earn ka na din na income. Okay? So, mo na siya pasabot sa temporary investment. Now, Shangri-La also had the following general loans. We have the 3 million and 5 million still. We have 10% and 12% interest. So, the construction began on January 1 and was completed on December 31. So, this is what I was telling na ang expense is staggered or ang atuang paggasto sa kwarta is not in a one-time full-blow basis. The expense was in staggered. In fact, we have 2 million on January 1, pero after 3 months pa siya nagpagawas og another 1 million and 3 million at the end of the 9th month. So, we have enough reason bakit niya ininvest temporarily yung pera kasi hindi niya naman nagamit lahat on January 1. Alright? So, the question now here is how to compute for the cost of the building. So, ganun pa rin naman. But again, what's new about this problem is meron na tayong specific borrowing. So the step 1 would be the same. We're going to compute for the weighted average carrying amount of the building. Let's begin with the 2 million on January 1. So that is still 12 over 12. So automatic yung 2 million. And the next expenditure was on March 31, 3 million expense. So, March 31 daw siya gipagawa. So, for the rest of the year, it is outstanding. Therefore, that would be 9 over 12. April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Ayan. And that would be... Ay, di lagi. 3 million. Okay, that's 2.25. And lastly, we have this 3 million... September 30 siya gipagawas, therefore we have 3 months na lang na outstanding. And we have a total or an average of 5 million. 5 million pesos. So this is our...
1 million sa March 31.
Ay, sorry. March 31. Ay, ayan, 1 million pala. Sorry, who was it? Thank you po. 1 million. Ayan. So, wala ta naka-formula. Sorry po. Ayan. Okay, 3.5. Ayan, 3.5. The average expenditure was 3.5. So, in average, ang ato daw nagasto for the building is 3.5. Asa man nato gikuha ang 3.5? Gikan sa atong giutang, basically. But, first, the priority would be from the specific borrowing. Of course. Giutang nato to siya for the construction of the building. Therefore, the 3.5 there is from the specific borrowing na 2 million and the rest is from the general borrowing. basically. And how much is for the general borrowing? We have 1.5 million. So, wala tayong problema, 2 million. We just have to multiply it by, how much is the rate? 12% sa specific borrowing, and then that's it. Consider as well the 10,000 nga income. But, in this 1.5, na napod tayo complication nga naman, asa man natong gamitong ma'am? Is it the 10 or the 12%? So, pag hindi alam, kasi maraming general borrowings, we're going to compute for the capitalization rate. Interest, pila ganito interest? We have Shangri-La. We have 300 plus the 600 interest. That's a total of 900. And the principal is 3 million plus 5 million. And that would be 8 million in total. Therefore, our capitalization rate would be 11%. 11% na good. Napa di ay 11.25%. So that would be capitalization rate na maoy gamito nato in the computation of the borrowing cost in relation to the general borrowing. So, let's compute for the borrowing costs. Yan, costs. Duha na. Let's begin with the specific borrowing. Unsa ganito? We're going to compute for the interest expense. That would be 2 million, 2 million times the 12% rate. And how much is this? Is it 240,000, right? But we also have an interest income. We also earned an interest income of 10,000 based sa ato ang temporary investment. So, ang ato lang gyud cost or net cost is actually 230,000. Atong balikon. The specific borrowing cost would generally be the interest expense. Wala tay problema kay naka-specific man ang 12% kasi specific borrowing yan. So, diretso na tayong 2 million times 12%. Kaya nga lang, in this problem, sinabi niya na while the construction is ongoing, a portion of the specific borrowing was temporarily invested. Therefore, naka-earn tag 10,000 interest income. So, we're just going to consider the net interest expense. That's 240 minus 10,000. So far, so good. Now, let's proceed to the general borrowing cost. And that would be, katong 1.5 na atong na-compute kaganina, we have 1.5 million times the capitalization rate of 11.25%. So, hindi 10%, hindi rin 12%, kundi ang katong na-compute nato na capitalization rate. And that would be 168,750. This is the total borrowing cost. So if you will be asked how much is the total borrowing cost, your answer would be 398,750. But the question is how much is the cost of the building? Borrowing cost pa lang na. Therefore, we are going to consider katong expenditures nga ato ang na-spend. So that was 2 million plus 1 million plus 3 million. So, lagyan ko na lang dito, expenditures. So, that is a total of 6 million, tama? Ayan. Therefore, the total cost of the building is 6,398,750. Alright. And, someone got the correct answer as well. Ay, asa naman to? 6,380, 6,533, ayan. Mali sa rate. Nganong mali man ang rate? So, ano lang ni siya ha? Interest over principal or interest divided by principal. Pero, ang kaning interest o principal nga atong ginahisgutan diri is related to the general borrowing. General borrowing. So, huwag mo nang isali sa capitalization rate si specific. Kasi, specific siya. From the term itself, may sarili na siyang mundo, wag mo na siyang pakialaman. So, itong mga general, sila lang ang magkasinabot. Alright, so this is for Shangri-La Company, and there you have it, 6398750. Sige, okay lang kung mamali, we still have another problem. Sige, let's find out kung this time ato na ba ning ma-compute. Okay, now we have Innuendo Company. Innuendo Company. For grace. Okay. Ayan, so ganun pa rin, compute the cost of the new building. So ano po bang nangyari kay Innuendo Company? The company has outstanding loans for the entire year. Ayan, 2 million specific yan for the construction and a 10 million general loan. The entity began the self-construction of a building on January 1, and the building was completed on December 31. Amazing kay nato mga problems. If you could notice, 1 year lang na human na dayon og-construct ang building. But in reality, ambot lang unsa ni nga klase nga building, pero murag mamahalin man, pero murag 1 year lang kaya na nila mahuman. Wala pa ko kakita og construction sa building nga 1 year lang na human na. But anyway, mas okay na din tong 1 year lang para dili kayo complicated. But later, we're going to tackle as well a building construction nga more than 1 year. So, ayun. Amazing lang. Okay. The entity began the self-construction on January 1. Ayan, 1 year. And here are the following expenditures. So, this is an easier concept. An easier approach. An easier problem. Ganun lang. An easier problem compared to Shangri-La. Kasi kay Shangri-La, 2 general borrowings. Pero kaning sa iyaha, isa lang. So, kung isa lang, I think, dili ta maglisod og compute sa capitalization rate. Okay? And what do I mean by that? We will find out. So, we incurred 1 million on January 1. So, automatic yan na 1 million times 12 over 12. And then, we incurred another 4 million on July 1. So, that means 6 months siya nga outstanding. So, that's 1/2 of the year. That's 2 million. And lastly, you have 3 million incurred on November 1. Therefore, that's only 2 months outstanding. So, you practice yourself, ha? You look at the calendar, inyong nang tutukan para maanad mo ihap kung pila na ka months ang nabilin or pila ka months ang nagamit whatsoever. Okay? So, para di na ka masigig ihap-ihap si mong fingers. So, that would be 3 million times 2 divided by 12. That's 500. Therefore, we have a total of 3.5. Ayan, nag-una pa ko. 3.5 average carrying amount, but we have a specific borrowing. Therefore, of the 3.5, 2 million of that is from the specific loan. Therefore, what comes from the general loan is only 1.5. Almost the same siya kay Shangri-La, right? Okay, general borrowing. Now, Let's compute for the capitalization rate. But if you could notice, we only have one general loan. Kailangan pa ba nato mag-compute og capitalization rate? Hindi na. Bakit? Automatic na yan na 12%. Hindi siya katulad nung kay Shangri-La kanina and the first problem as well. We have two general loans. So, medyo ma-confuse ta which rate will be used. Will it be 12 or will it be 14? In Shangri-La, will it be 10 or will it be 12? But in this particular problem of innuendo, wala na siyang kaagaw. Isa lang ang general loan. So, automatic na yan na 12%. Wag ka nang magsayang ng oras na mag-compute pa ng capitalization rate. So, let's compute na the borrowing costs. First, let's compute for the specific borrowing, and that would be 2 million times, how much is the rate? 10% for the specific loan. So, 10% yun. This time, wala siyang sinabi na nag-invest tayo temporarily, na naka-earn tayo ng income or interest income. So, that's it. 2 million times 10%. That's basically 200. And the borrowing cost from our general borrowing, we're going to use the 1.5 na na-compute natin sa taas times yung 12%. Yung nag-iisang borrowing rate. Okay? So, that would be 1.5 times 12. Ayan. We have 180. Therefore, we have a total borrowing cost of 380. Pero borrowing cost pa lang to. Ang tanong niya, cost of the building. So, we're going to consider the total expenditure. That is 1 million plus 4 million plus 3 million. Therefore, it would be 8 million. And the cost of the building now is 8.38 million. So, muna akong pasabot nga, it's the simpler version of Shangri-La. Bakit simpler version? If you could notice, hindi na tayo nag-compute ng capitalization rate kasi may isang general borrowing lang tayo. Okay? So, ma'am, what if na itulo a general borrowing? So, yung ani lang gihapon. Interest sa tulo ka loans plus, divide it by the principal of the three general loans, and then you could compute now for the capitalization rate. Ganun pa rin. Alright? So, let's see kung nabay nakakuha.
Ma'am,
Yes.
dili na hilabta ng general loan na 10 million ba to?
Ay, what do you mean by hilabdan? Wala tayong gagawin kay 10 million. Okay.
Okay.
Ang ibig sabihin lang nito, of the 10 million na inutang natin, 1.5 dyan nagamit for the construction of the building. The rest of the 8.5, siguro ginamit niya for payment of salaries or ginamit niya para bumili ng lupa, etc. Basta it is general purpose. Okay? Parang, siya ba? All-around purpose. So, unlike dito sa 2 million, inutang mo siya, naagid siya padulngan. Specifically, imo gid siyang gamiton for the construction of the building. Itong general loan naman, kahit saan, including the building. So, actually, if you could notice as well, atong general loans, mas dako compared sa ato ang total expenditures. For example, in Sulu Company, you have 8 million. Pero ang total lang na atong nagamit for the building is 5 million. Therefore, ang 3 million, gigamit pa niya sa uban ng mga items. In Shangri-La, we have 8 million as well. Pero ang atong nagamit is 3, 4, 5, 6 million. Pero ang 2 million ana gikan sa specific borrowing. Ang specific borrowing most of the time ubos-ubos gyud na, like mahurot gyud na tanan for the construction. And then ang nabilin or the balance, it will be the balance of the construction of the building or the balance of the expenditure will be extracted from the general loan. So gamito nato tong 4 million din hiang. Anong 4 million na lang man? Kasi nga 6 million, ang 2 million from the specific borrowing. So in this problem, ganun pa rin. We have 8 million total, pero ang 6 million lang ang atong gigamit from the general. So napay nabilin nga 4 million for some other purposes. So ganun yun siya. Okay?
Thank
Sige.
you, ma'am.
Okay. Sige, let's proceed to the next problem. We have some few problems paghihapon, and this time we're going to have Mulave Company. All right? So, Mulave Company is somehow the same with innuendo. May isang specific, may isang general. Kaya nga lang, ito na yung sinasabi ko na yung construction niya is more than 1 year. For the first time, naka-encounter tag company nga na medyo realistic. Okay, I'll give you some time to read and analyze. Okay. Kadasig ba ni nga to ang mga ano din mga suking tigpaminaw, maayong buntag, hello. Ayan. Ay, 8380. Nari nag-answer ka ganina nag 8380. Okay. Sige. Thank you for your cooperation ha. At least ma-feel ko din naman na hindi ako nag-iisa. At least ma-feel na ko ba nga murag napakoy kauban diri. But anyway, thank you. Ayan. Anong 2019 po? Sige. Mulave Company is like the same, it's just the same, almost the same with innuendo. Kaya nga lang, like I mentioned, na more than 1 year. So, how do we account or how do we compute for the borrowing cost and even for the interest expense or eventually for the cost of the new building if the construction lasted for a year or more than 1 year rather? Okay, let's begin with the computation of our average carrying amount. So, I think I mentioned this kanina, although I didn't emphasize na ang ato ang average carrying amount should be computed on a yearly basis. Okay? Yearly basis ning step 1. So, when we say yearly basis, for this particular problem, unahon sa nato si 2019. So, January 1, we have 4 million. That's automatic 12 over 12. And then on April 1, we have 5 million. So April, we have 9 months, tama? And that would be next, we have lastly, ito na yung last for 2019. We have 3 million on December 1. So that's 1 over 12 na lang. And that's 250,000. So in total, we have an average carrying amount of 8 million and specific borrowing that comes from the specific borrowing of 3 million and the rest is from the general borrowing. So it's 5 million from the general borrowing. So next, are we going to compute for the capitalization rate in this particular problem? So ganito, if you only have one general loan, huwag ka nang magsayang ng oras, diretso na yan, 12% based dun sa interest rate ng nag-iisang general loan. Kaya huwag na tayong mag-compute, diretso na tayo. So let's compute for the borrowing costs. for 2019. So let's begin with our specific borrowing. Okay, that would be 3 million times 10%. Was it 10%? 10%. And for our general, that would be the 5 million na compute natin sa itaas times the only interest rate or the rate of the only general borrowing. Yan. Grammar, ma'am. Okay, that would be 300,000, I believe, and that would be a 600,000 for the general borrowing. May nag-on po ba ng mic? May nag-on ng mic or is it my audio na naglolo ko? Check mic test. Hello? Hello? Okay lang po bang audio ko, mga kaibigan?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Ay, okay. Wag naman ko yung naga-noise. Sige, anyway, let's proceed. Our total borrowing cost for 2019 would be 900,000. Ayan. And therefore, our cost for 2019. So, as if 2019 palang takaron. 12/31/2019, December 31 year end. How much is the cost of the building? Of course, kailangan natin itong i-disclose. Dili na ito paabuton nga mahuman ang project bago na to siya i-report. So, of course, kailangan din natin i-report sa financial statement natin for 2019. So far, ongoing pa yung construction, ma'am, sir. Kaya, yung cost of the building as of December 31, 2019 is, how much is this? 12? It's 4, 5, 3. 12. Okay, 12. That is 12,900, ma'am, sir. Pero, of course, on 2020, ongoing pa rin naman ng construction, kaya magko-compute ulit tayo. So, average na naman, if you are now in year 2, okay, if you are now in year 2, the average now is automatically the cost of the building as of the end of year 1. So, kung pila tong imuhang cost of the building at the end of year 1, that would be the amount or the carrying amount for the following year. Ay, that's 1/1/2020. So that would be 12,900. Ayan. So nanata sa ikaduhang tuig ha, balik na po ta sa step 1. We're going to compute for the carrying amount or the average carrying amount. That's 12.9 at the beginning of the year. Again, asa ganigi ka ng 12.9? Dire. Katong cost of the building at the end of last year. 12.9, but how many months siya outstanding? So, based on the problem, it was completed on June 30. So, that's only 6 months outstanding. So, that's 6 over 6. And that is still 12.9. Now, we have an additional cost of 6 million incurred on March 1. So, from March 1 to June 30. So, ang atong cut-off kung kanusa lang na-complete ang construction. So, March, April, May, June. March 30 ba to? Ay, March 1. March, April, May, June. So, that's basically 4 over 6. So, 6 million. So, 4 million na din. Therefore, we have an average of 16,900,000. Nay nagalupad-lupad sa akong nawong. Alright, so the 16,900,000, the same lang gihapon na process. Deduct the borrowing or the specific borrowing para mabili na lang ang general borrowing. So specific borrowing is just the same. Pila ganito? 3 million. Therefore, 13,900 will come from our general borrowing. Kaya ra ba niya i-absorb? How much is our general borrowing pala? Ayan, 25 million. So if you could notice, mas dako gihapon. So the rest, gigamit sa ubang purposes. So let's now compute for the borrowing costs. Let's begin with specific borrowing. Ganun pa rin. On year 2, specific borrowing is 3 million. Kaya nga lang, since out of 12 months, nahuman nato siya within 6 months sa year 2, therefore, times 10% times 6 over 12. Kung pila lang siya ka months outstanding. Alright? So, that would be 300,000 times 6 divided by 12. Basically, that's 150. And the same concept will be applied in our general borrowing. So, pila naman ang ato ang amount karon, di ba? 13.9 based sa atong na-compute sa taas. So, that would be 13.9 million times 12% times 6 over 12 kasi 6 months lang naman siya outstanding. So, that would be 3,900, 834,000. So, our total cost of borrowing for 2020 is 984 and we're going to add it from the total expenditure. So, our total expenditure is asa na ba ta? 12. Okay. This time, yung total expenditure natin is 12.9 plus 6. So, this is something new. Ma'am, nga nung 12.9 nga, kung ato i-compute, this is actually 4 plus 5 plus 3 plus 6. So, that is just 18,000. I mean, 18 million. Pero why is it nga 18.9? Pareha lang gihapon sa usual. Di ba nga itong expenditure, diri man ta naga-base? Ayan, ato maning i-add. That's why we get 12 million. In the previous problem, ganun din. That's why we get 8 million. And the same goes here, 6 million. Even gani katong zero lang ang iyahang outstanding months, ato na siyang i-appeal. That's why we get 5 million. So the same goes here in year 2. We are going to base it here. So that would be 18.9 million. Nganong 12.9 man, ma'am? Nganong dili man kadtong 12? Kasi nga, yan na yung cost ng building natin as of the end of year 1. So on year 2, kasali na siya dun sa cost ng building. So supposedly, instead of 12 million lang, nanay nadugang na 900 na borrowing cost from year 1. Therefore, we add the 900 as well. That would be 18.9 million. Or if wala mo nag-prepare og ing-ani, it's simply 4 plus 5 plus 3 plus 6 plus the borrowing cost of last year or year 1. So this is 18 plus the borrowing cost of year 1 nga 900, ganun pa rin. 18.9. So we have a total expenditure of or total cost of the building 19,884,000 cost of the building, and this is 6/30/2020. And ayan. Ay. Ano nga ulit yung tanong? Compute the cost of the new building. So, ayun, on December 31 and on June 30. So, we now have the 12.9 and the 19,884. Now, for the next question, compute the interest expense for 2019 and 2020. Okay, interest expense. In 2019, balikan natin si 2019, ang interest expense na lang dinhi ang kadtong wala na gamit for the construction of the building. Okay, again, ang wala na gamit for the construction of the building. Let's begin with our specific borrowing. Pila ba dapat ang total interest niya? That's 3 million total interest. Supposedly, so wag ko na lalagay total interest, baka ma-confuse kayo. Supposedly, we will have an expense of 3 million times 10%. Tama? And that is 300,000. Pero, kaning 300,000, nagamit sa building or wala? Nagamit. Ayan, specific borrowing, 300,000. Therefore, borrowing cost na ni siya. Once it is a borrowing cost, hindi na siya pwedeng maging interest expense. Okay? Hindi siya pwedeng maging doble kara. Mura siya tug of war. Kung naabot na siya sa pikas, dili pwede nga birahon pa siya sa pikas. Okay? You can't serve two masters. So, kung 300,000 is borrowing cost, hindi na makikipag-agawan si interest expense, borrowing cost na siya. This is just for year 1 ha, take note. Let's proceed to general borrowing. Pila ba dapat ang atuang interest or expense with regards to general borrowing? So that's 25 million times the 12%. Tama ba 12? Okay. This is a total of 3 million. Of the 3 million, pila ang nagamit for the building and pila ang nabilin. So basically, ang nabilin, automatic yun siyang interest expense. Ang nagamit lang for the building is ito, the 600,000 or yung related lang sa building is only the 5 million. Ayan. So it's only 600,000 borrowing cost. Therefore, the balance of 2.4 is considered an interest expense. So for 2019, how much is the total interest expense? It's only 2.4 million. Okay? That's for 2019. Now let's proceed to 2020 or year 2. Ganun pa rin, specific borrowing, general borrowing, etc. But this time, there would be some changes. Bakit? Of the specific borrowing na 300,000, magkano ang napunta sa cost ng building? Is it still 300,000? I believe it's not. Nga naman, we only have 100, We only have 150,000 for the specific borrowing in year 2. Ayan, 150 lang. Therefore, kung ang 150 borrowing cost, ang the other 150 will automatically be part of the interest expense. Ma'am, bakit po tayo nagkaroon ng interest expense? Di ba specific naman siya for the building? Take note, hanggang June lang ang construction ng building. Therefore, the rest will be considered as excluded in the cost of the building. So, ganito yan siya. Pag nangutang ka, kahit pa sabihin mo sa bank, itong inutang ko specifically para to sa construction ng building ko. Walang pakialam si bank. Sasabihin niya, okay, wala akong pakialam, basta magbayad ka ng interest. Okay? So, pagpunta mo sa entity, may dala-dala ka ng pera, sasabihin mo sa management, atong perang to para sa construction ng building. So, sasabihin ni bank, wala akong pakialam, basta magbayad ka lang, magbayad ka din ng interest. Pero on the side of the management, ang interest na babayaran natin in connection with that loan will be part of the cost of the building. Okay? Again, si bank wala siyang pakialam sa treatment natin. Okay? Sa entity lang din naman yan sa atin yan. Kaya yung 150 or yung 300, part siya sa building, hindi siya interest expense. Now, on 2020, hanggang June 30 lang pala yung construction ng building. Pero si bank, again, wala siyang pakialam. Basta magbayad ka, you're good to go. So, nung 2020, ang pera ni bank na ginamit natin, nagamit lang pala natin siya for 6 months. So, hanggang completion lang ng building. Alam nga naman sabihin mo kay bank, hanggang June 30 lang ang interest ko ha, kasi napatayo ko na yung building. Sasabihin ng bank, wala akong problema, basta bayaran mo din ako ng June 30, edi wala ka ng interest. Pero, most probably, hindi mo siya mababayaran. Kakagawa mo pa nga lang ng building, di ba? So, most probably, mababayaran mo siya for the next few years pa. So, sasabihin ni bank, wala akong pakialam, basta magbayad ka lang ng interest, bayaran mo din yung principal. So, even though tapos na ang construction ng building, the interest is still there. Mangongolekta pa rin ng interest si bank. So, wag mong sasabihin na for the rest of the years, yung interest dun sa 2 million, ilalagay mo sa cost of the building. Hindi pwede. Kasi according to the standards, pag tapos na ang building, hindi na niya kailangang i-shoulder pa ang interest nung inutang mo. Therefore, yung another 6 months from July 1 to December 31 na interest mo, hindi mo na yun pwedeng ibigay sa cost ng building. Hindi mo na pwedeng ilagay sa cost ng building. Kailangan na yun is-separate. And, ma'am, bakit kailangan pa nating mag-150? Kasi nga, hindi mo pa nabayaran si bank. Okay? Wala siyang pakialam kung anong gagawin mo dyan, i-borrowing cost mo ba yan o interest, basta magbayad ka ng interest. Therefore, may babayaran pa rin tayong 150 for the remaining 6 months. But again, according to standards, hindi mo na kailangang itapak yun dun sa cost if tapos na ang construction. Therefore, the remaining 6 months from July 1 to December 31 will be considered as an expense. Ayan. Okay po ba tayo? I think okay naman. So, let's proceed to the general borrowing. The same 3 million pero the borrowing cost is just 834. Ayan. So, 834,000. Therefore, the interest expense would be the balance of 2166. Therefore, our 2020 interest expense would be 2166 plus the 150 from the borrowing cost. Ayan. So, a total of 2,316,000 interest expense for 2020. So far, okay lang ba? Naka-follow ba? So, what's new about this problem? More than 1 year ang construction. So, what have we learned? Pag more than 1 year, ito, first things first, ang average, ang carrying amount mo on the beginning of the year 2 would be the cost of the building in year 1. And consider mo din kung ilang months siya natapos. What if, ma'am, natapos siya on year 3? O di 12 over 12 gihapon ni, 12 over 12 gihapon ni. Ang borrowing cost ni mo sa specific, 300,000 gihapon. Wala gihapon ipadulong sa interest expense. Okay? So, ganun pa rin. Alright? Now, what if, ma'am, nahuman siya March 31? Pwede over 3 lang. Okay? So, 3 over 3 lang yan. And ito naman, that's, wala. March, okay, 1 over 3. So, ganon. Okay? And, apply mo din yung concept sa borrowing cost. Alright, so I think that is something. Okay, we have, ano yan, Glems? 2.4 and 2316. Alright, very good. Actually, ando naman siya, may illustration naman tayo dun sa book, di ba? Okay. Ano pa to? 2868. Okay. Thank you for your participation. So, kahit mali or kahit may kulang, etc., still you tried. Okay? You learn from your mistakes. I think this is going to be the last problem for borrowing cost. So, give your best shot. Alright. So, medyo mahaba, pero kaya naman natin. We have Gemini Company. Alright? Ay. Tama ba ang nasend ko? Gemini Company. Sige. So, we have 4 requirements here. Although, ito pa rin naman yung step-by-step process natin. Okay, I'll give you a minute to read the problem and then sabay-sabay tayong mag-solve. Okay. So, ayan. It's the concepts that we learned earlier of all the problems na encounter natin previously, in-apply niya lang dito. But what's new about this problem, ayan, may something new na naman, is yung specific borrowing natin is binigyan niya tayo ng future value. Kasi yung interest niya compounded quarterly. Ayan. So kung gusto niyo siya manumanuhon, you could compute it manually. Kung na-remember niyo pa how to compute for the interest if it is compounded annually, or ito nga compounded quarterly, ayan, mas mahirap. Or mas, hindi mo siya mas mahirap, pero basta compound ayoko. Okay, but thank God, binigyan tayo ng 1.1255. So, it would be easy for us to compute the interest. Ayan. And I think that's the only thing na bago dito sa problem na to. And mali pa yung spelling niya ng interest expense. Compute the interest expense. Ayan. Na-OC ako dun. But anyway, let's proceed. Ano to? Gemini. Okay. Gemini Company. First thing, compute for the average expenditure. Ay, expert na taan eh. Let's start with the January 1 and that is the 2 million. So, 12 or 12 yon. Itong building ba to? Isang taon lang? I think isang taon lang. Ang galing ng mga kontraktor na to. And for March 31, we have 4 million. March 31 daw. So, that would be 9 over 12. And we have 6-1 for June 30. So, that would be 6 over 12. We have 4-4 September 30. Therefore, that would be 3 over 12. And lastly, December 31, 3.5. So, December 31, 0 na yun siya. Okay? Sige, let's compute. This is automatically 2 million. This is 3 million and this is 1/2. Ayan. And we have a total of, baka may mali akong na-type, just let me know ha. So we have a total of 9.15 million. So this is our average expenditure. Average expenditure. And this is question number 1. Ganun lang, step by step. Next, we are to compute the capitalizable borrowing cost. So capitalizable borrowing cost. Magkano yung borrowing cost? Okay, so this is the average expenditure and how much will go to the specific borrowing? Magkano po bang specific borrowing natin? We have that 12% 4-year note. Ayan, naka-bold siya. Specifically to the building project. Huwag ka nang makipag-argue, specific borrowing yan. And the rest to borrowings there are hindi naman naka-specify kung para saan. So, general borrowing yan. So, we have two, 10% and 12%, 6 million and 7 million. So, later, we're going to compute for the capitalizable rate. I mean, capitalization rate, rather. So, that was 8.5. And how much will go to the general borrowing this time? 650. Ay, kagamay na lang man di ay. Sige lang. Dako siya pundo sa iyahang specific borrowing. Okay, that's 650,000. And we could now compute for the borrowing costs. Let's begin with the specific. Specific borrowing, that would be, okay, ito na yung bago sa question na to. We have 8.5. Kung i-compute mo how much is the interest or it's actually an interest naman talaga, di ba? Interest, gusto mo siyang i-compute manually, pwede din. So, that's 8.5 times compounded quarterly daw. So, divided by 4 yung 12%. So, that's 3%. 255 for the first quarter. And then, i-add mo ulit yung 8.5. And then, multiply ka na naman ng 3%. So, 262,650 for the second quarter. So, you do it for the rest of the year and you will get how much is the interest expense. But actually, we could do it in an easier way kasi binigay niya na rin naman ang future value. I mean, present value, future value nga. Future value of the payments. So, it's a simple 8.5 times 1.12555. And, naglalag siya. Okay. Saan naman ta? Okay. That would be 8.5 million times 1.1255. Sige, pila ni guys? That is, sige, 8.5 times 1.1255. That would be 9,566,750. So, ito yung total interest plus principal. So, kung mao ni siya ang total, pila di ay ang interest. So, that would be 9,566,750 minus the 8.5 na principal, you have an interest of 1,066,750. And this interest is the borrowing cost for the specific loan. Okay? And the general loan, again, kung gusto ni mo manumanuhon, you will arrive at the same 1,066,750. Siguro nalay mga difference nga 200, 100, ganyan. Mga immaterial lang din naman na difference. Okay? Pero, since binigay niya naman ang madaling way, gamitin na natin. Okay? Again, this is the total maturity value. That's 9,560,750. Deduct mo yung 8.5, you will get the interest. Okay, general borrowing. How much? 650 based sa atong computation sa taas times the capitalizable rate. Ayan, nasanay na tayo, hindi tayo nag-compute ng capitalizable rate. So, let's compute for the capitalizable rate first. Interest is, pila ba? Okay, we have 6 million times 10%. So, magkano yun? 600,000, right? Plus 7 million times 12%. 7 million times 12%, that would be 840. Ayan. And the principal would be 6 plus 7 million. 6 plus 7, therefore, how much is this? 613 million. Our capitalizable rate would be 11.08. Okay, 11.08 capitalization rate. Ayan. So that one, 11.08 will be used here in our general borrowing. That's 1108. So, pila ba ang atuang borrowing cost? That would be 72,020. And the next question is, how much is the capitalizable borrowing cost? We just have to add the 2 and we will get 1138. Okay? 1138,770 is the answer for question number 2. And number 3, determine the total cost of the building. Okay. Borrowing cost plus the total expenditure lang naman yon. And how much is the total expenditure? We have 2 plus 4 plus 6.1 plus 4.4 plus 3.5. That would be 20 million. Therefore, the total cost is 21,138,750. Would you agree? Nakuha nyo ba? Hopefully. And lastly, the interest. The interest expense for 2019. In our specific borrowing, magkakaroon pa ba tayo ng interest expense? I think wala na, di ba? Kasi yung buong interest niya napunta na sa borrowing cost. Pero sa general borrowing, I think we still have an interest expense from this borrowing. So, our general borrowing is dalawa yon. We have the 6 million times 10%. we also have the 7 million times 12%. And this is 600 and 840. Ito lahat. Pero a part of that goes to the cost of the building. And how much is the capitalizable interest? The 720,020 na na-compute natin kanina. So this is capitalized. Therefore, ang interest expense na lang, interest expense, would be 600 plus 840 minus the 72,020. Ayan. Therefore, our interest expense is 1,367,980. This is question number 4. Alright. So far, so good. Naka-follow ba? Daw be, kung nabay nakakuha. Oy, walay nag-answer. Walang nakakuha. Wala nagikapoy nag-answer, ma'am, kay taas kay ang problem. Ang sakit. Okay. So, I think, taas lang siya, pero carry naman, di ba? Okay, that would be the last problem for borrowing cost. And the next topic will be land and building, right? Land and building. Okay? Walang question.